I'm just gonna read this along with you called Masters of the Universe Skeletor's Ice Attack. Might goes the hand in hand with right as He-Man and the Masters of the Universe fight to make their planet safe. The greatest of their enemies is Skeletor, the Lord of Destruction, and his evil band, whose hatred for their foes is never ending. The war goes on, but who will win? Masters of the Universe Skeletor's Ice Attack by John Grant, illustrated by Robin Davis, published by Ladybird Books. It was a bright sunny day in the port of Randor Haven. Flags waved in the sea breeze, and the crowds lined the quayside to cheer as King Randor and Queen Marlena prepared to embark in the royal ship. Sea Eagle, their son Prince Adam, was with them, and also his childhood friend Teela. The royal family stepped into the royal hover barge and were swiftly ferried across the harbour. With a beating of drums and fanfares of trumpets, they went aboard Sea Eagle. The king, a queen, and even Teela greeted the captain with proper dignity, but King Randor frowned at Prince Adam, who was too excited at the thought of the summer holiday in the Golden Isles. He laughed and shouted and waved to the sailors and the crowd on shore, who waved and shouted back. No one suspected that the happy-go-lucky prince was also He-Man, the mightiest man in the universe. The decks of Sea Eagle bustled with activity as the crew prepared for sea. Baggage was taken below, the passengers were shown to their cabins as the royal hover barge returned to the shore. No one noticed a sinister shape lurking in the shadows close to the hull of Sea Eagle. It was part human, but covered in scales. No one of the sea people, a servant of Merman, lord of the sea. His head above water, the evil creature strained his ears as the crew spoke amongst themselves. Look like being a good voyage. Yes, I always enjoy the trip to the Golden Isles. I hope the weather stays calm for His Majesty and family. Right now, let's get this gear stowed. We sail with the tide. Even before Sea Eagle had weighed anchor, or before the officers on the bridge had set the electronic sail controls, the spy was already speeding underwater towards the caverns of the sea people. Far below the surface, Merman sat in the dim green light of his underwater lair. He wanted the power, but to gain power he needed to find favor with his master, Skeletor, Lord of Destruction. Suddenly there was a commotion outside. Two guards came in, escorting a painted Sea creature, he threw himself at Merman's feet. Master, he gasped, your enemies have set sail in the ship. Their course is towards the Golden Isles. Merman jumped to his feet, alone in the sea. They are at my mercy. This must be reported to my Lord Skeletor immediately. Within seconds, the word came back from the Lord of Destruction. Capture the royal family of Eternia and hold them to ransom. And this time, do bungle it in your usual way. Quickly, Merman issued his orders. Then, on a giant monitor screen, he watched as the Sea Eagle sped across the surface of the sea. The hull just above the waves. Merman pointed to a chart carved on the rock wall of the cavern. By nightfall, the ship will have reached this point. That is where I shall set my trap. Through the slimy caverns and passages of the undersea world, the sea people hurried to the assembly point. Each was armed with a zero-energy projector. At command from Merman, the outer gates of his fortress open. In a shimmering column of scaly bodies of his people glided swiftly through the green depths to intercept Sea Eagle and her royal passengers. The sun had set below the horizon when Merman halted his people, rising carefully just above the water. He scanned the surface of the sea. In the last of the light, he could just make out the gleam of sails as the royal ship sailed straight into the Merman's trap. On board, King Randor and Prince Adam had joined the captain on the bridge. All was quiet. Lights flickered on the navigation panel. The wheel was on automatic pilot. Only occasionally an officer adjusted the sail controls. As the wind changed slightly, the king and his son went to the cabins, and the great ship flew across the waves and into the gathering darkness. Merman took one last look, then he gave his command. The sea people spread out into the wild circle, and as the Sea Eagle reached the center, they aimed their weapons and fired. As the zero energy was released, the sea began to freeze. A thin film of ice formed around the ship. It grew thicker. It formed into hammocks and pinnacles. Soon, the Sea Eagle was trapped in the middle of a giant ice floe. Merman dismissed his people, then waited to decide his next move. On the bridge of the Sea Eagle, the instruments showed the speed of the ship. Rapidly dropping, the captain ordered powerful searchlights to be switched on. At first there was nothing to see. Then one of the sailors cried out, "Captain, look at the sea! There's something that happened to it. The waves have stopped moving. The sea is freezing," cried the captain. "We must break out." Set more sail, but even as the controls were adjusted, the ice was growing thicker and piling up around the ship. Sea Eagle was trapped and helpless. Passengers and crew dressed in cold weather gear and examined the ice from the deck. "We must try to blast our way out," said the captain. The ship weapons were trained on the ice, but even after several minutes of firing, they had no effect. When dawn came, the ship was held as firmly as before. In the cabin, Prince Adam was thinking about the situation. This is the work of Skeletor or one of his evil band. He said to himself, "This is time for the Masters of the Universe to take a hand." He pulled the Sword of Power from his hiding place among his clothes in a chest, unleashing the sword, and he cried, "By the power of Grayskull!" And he was instantly transformed into He-Man. Using the power of the blade, he sent out a powerful telesummons to Man-at-Arms back at the Castle Grayskull to join him secretly in Talon Fighter. Then he made his way stealthily to the ship's chart room. There, after a quick search, he found the chart he was looking for. Then he hurried back to his cabin to study it and complete his plans. With the chart spread on the cabin table, He-Man worked out the position of Sea Eagle. Then he thought, while the ship is trapped in thin ice, we may be attacked at any time. There is only one way to melt the ice flow of the side. We must try to harness the power of infernal islands. It is a long way off, but it is our only chance. Rolling up the chart and tucking it into his belt, He-Man slipped out of the cabin and up on the deck. It was deserted, as the passengers and crew stayed below decks, out of the bitter cold from the ice. Taking a coil of rope, He-Man tied it to the ship's rail, and he climbed down it. The ice was piled in a great jumbled mass. After a few steps, He-Man was out of sight of the ship, but he hurried on until he came to the water's edge, where the flow was flat and smooth, even. As he did so, the Sword of Power began to pulsate with light as it picked up a homing signal from Talon Fighter. Hidden among the ice hammocks, He-Man watched for the first sign of Talon Fighter. Far from off, he made out the roar of the craft's jets. Then the sound stopped as Man-at-Arms cut the power. and swooped down in a fast, silent glide close above the waves and hidden from the sea eagle. But the ice, one quick burst of reverse thrust, then the sleek craft was down and sliding to a halt close to He-Man. Man-at-Arms stepped out of the cockpit and grasped He-Man by the hand. I think that this is mischief is the work of that green troublemaker merman. I saw a lot of activity below the waves as I flew over. He-Man showed Man-at-Arms the chart. I don't know exactly what merman is likely to be plotting, he said, but we have not a moment to lose. With He-Man at the controls, Talon Fighter lifted from the ice, and in the moment was a shining speck against the sky. With controls a lot on to the course, already worked out by He-Man from the borrowed chart, Talon Fighter flashed through the sky. Soon the ice floe and the imprisoned sea eagle were left far from behind. He-Man strained his eyes, scanning the horizon. Then he cried out, "There it is, dead ahead, Infernal Island." Soon they could make out clearly the smoking top of the island. The smoke rose in the column higher even than Talon Fighter, and He-Man took over the controls and made a wide circle to avoid it. Then he put Talon Fighter into a steep dive that brought them closer to the crater of the volcano. The craft bounced and buffeted the hot air currents rising from the fiery island. It took all of He-Man's mighty strength and to hold a steady course around the rim and the crater where molten lava bubbled and fumed close to overflowing. He-Man circled the volcano once more, then he swung Talon Fighter into the position for a long-last dive towards the crater's rim. Jet screaming at the fuel power, Talon Fighter hurtled downwards. Then He-Man pressed the firing controls on the laser cannons. White-hot streaks of energy leaped from the muzzles, and fragments of rock flew into the air. The rim of the crater crumbled and collapsed as He-Man pulled his craft up and away in a tight turn. The whole side of the volcano collapsed. Molten lava rolled in a burning river across the island. When it reached the sea, the water boiled with great clouds of steam. Swiftly the boiling water moved out from the island, a current of the steamy water already travelling in the direction of the Sea Eagle. Once there, it would melt the ice and the ship would be free. Racing ahead of the current, Talon Fighter drew close to the ice floe, as Man-at-Arms had done. He-Man came in low, and through the clear water he saw the sea people massing for the attack. The warm current was going to arrive too late. He-Man brought Talon Fighter into hover just above the ice. Then he jumped out, while Man-at-Arms again took to the air. His job was to keep watch on the activities of the sea people, boarding the ship in the same way as he had left it. He-Man hurried to find Teela and explained what he and Man-at-Arms had been doing. As the warrior goddess, her powers were almost equal to his own, and he wanted her help. The warm sea current is moving too slowly, he explained. We must go to meet it. While Merman has at his command great numbers of the creatures of the sea, there are many of whom he is not master. The warm-blooded sea dwellers count him as their enemy. Perhaps they will come to our aid. Will you try? Yes, replied Teela. If I can reach enough of them by thought energy, they will do as I ask. Following He-Man, Teela climbed down to the ice. They looked for a higher place and found a nice pinnacle. He-Man helped Teela to stand on top of it. Then she raised her cobra scepter above her head as her thought of energy flowed into the eyes, began to pulse with power. Soon the eyes of the scepter glowed steadily and brightly. Teela closed her eyes and began to transmit a silent message by the power of her mind. I, Teela, warrior goddess, some of you who have warm blood, by command of the Lord He-Man. He-Man scanned the waves, but nothing moved. Again, Teela sent out her message again, and then far off there appeared a puff of vapor above the waves, then another and another. A school of whales was approaching. A herd of walruses suddenly surfaced close to the ice. Dolphins came in leaping over the crests of the waves, and the school of porpoises flowed quickly. More and more whales, walruses, dolphins, porpoises, and a huge herd of the seals joined them. In her mind, Teela heard their thoughts. Commanders, Teela, we're here to do your bidding. He-Man looked at the sea animals as they jostled beside the ice floe. Now he said to Teela, command them to push against the ice. Again Teela raised the cobra scepter again. The eyes glowed as she sent out more mind energy. Use your strength, push against the ice. With a great threshing of tails, fins and flippers, the whales, walruses, dolphins, porpoises and seals push hard. At first nothing happened, then slowly the great ice floe began to move. It gathered speed, heading steadily for the warm current flowing from the infernal island. Again, humans had scanned the surface of the sea for any sign of mermen, but the sea people were keeping out of sight because man-at-arms was circling above. There was nothing more than He-Man and Teela could do for the moment. He-Man said, "You go back to the ship. I will get man-at-arms to pick me up." He waited until she had gone, then changed into Prince Adam once more and made his way unseen back onto the ship as well. Far away in his lair on Snake Mountain, Skeletor, Lord of Destruction, was uneasy. He decided to spy on his underlings and activate his spy scan monitor. All seemed well. Then he tuned into Merman. At first it looked as though Merman was winning the day. On the screen, Sea Eagle appears trapped in the ice below the surface of the sea. Was Merman surrounded by his warriors? But when Skeletor looked up again, he saw the ice floe in which the Sea Eagle was trapped. Was itself moving away from the undersea army. Skeletor screamed with rage, and Johnny's slaves fled in terror. "That fool!" he roared. "His bungling will bring disaster to us all!" Shouting an order to his scurrying slaves, he raced out to his fast and deadly hovercraft. His Rotan was ready for him, prepared to take off, scattering the ground the crew before him. Skeletor leaped aboard, and a moment later was flashing across the coast and out to sea. From a distance, Skeletor spotted the trapped Sea Eagle. As he got closer, he saw the great mass of creatures pushing the ice floe. Desperate to know what was happening, Skeletor called up Merman. Merman's face appeared on the cockpit video screen. "You spineless jellyfish!" Skeletor shrieked. "This is some trick of the masters of the universe. Do something about it. I'll order my warriors," stammered Merman. "Warriors? Witless sea urchins!" cried Skeletor. "Summon the sharks, stingrays, sea serpents to attack those interfering air breathers." Merman did as he was ordered, climbing to the ice to direct operations. Skeletor watched with satisfaction as the swarm of sharks, stingrays, of sea serpents raced to attack. Then he glided the Rotan into alight the ice. He still had to deal with Merman. At the sound of the barrel, the passengers and the crew of Sea Eagle rushed on deck. Already they could feel the air coming mildly as the ice melted. They saw Merman fire once again at Skeletor. Merman slipped on the ice. He sprawled the full length and his weapon flew from his hand. It slid along the ice and over the edge. Weaponless merman decided to follow. In an hail of shots, from Skeletor, he dived into water and disappeared. Alone on the ice, Skeletor made to escape in the Rotan, but he had left it too late. The ice floe was already breaking into the fragments. A wide lane of water separated him from his machine, which drifted farther off even as he watched. The sea under Skeletor's feet gave the lurch. The piece upon of which he was standing had broken free from the main floe, and it was drifting off, carrying him with it. Standing by the ship's rail, Prince Adam and Teela watched Skeletor's plight. "I feel almost sorry for him," said Teela. Skeletor clung in terror to the rapidly shrinking piece of ice. "Merman," he screamed, "I command you to my aid. I'm your lord and master." There was a swirl in the water, but it was not Merman. One of the killer whales was in a playful mood. It swam close, then it dived under Skeletor, making the ice rock violently against Skeletor. Shouted for Merman. Adam turned to Teela. "Merman is not the bravest of creatures," he said. "Skeletor is going to be very cold and wet before Merman plucks up the courage to face him, let alone rescue him." The last piece of the ice drifted clear of Sea Eagle. The captain shouted in an order, and the sails filled to the freshening breeze. The great ship gathered away faster and faster until the winds sank in the rigging, and she scarcely seemed to touch even the tops of the waves. The passengers looked astern, already far behind the last pieces of ice bobbed on the waves. On one the Rotan could be seen, and on the other a tiny figure of Skeletor waved and shouted for Merman. But Adam, with Teela by his side, was looking at the sky. Away in the distance he could see a silvery streak against the blue. It was the Talon fighter returning to Castle Grayskull with man at arms. The masters of the universe have triumphed once again. And that was a read-through of Masters of the Universe, Skeletor's Ice Attack. I hope you enjoyed this read along of this book, and I will get round to do the other one at some point. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Frankie Smales. I'm on the other social media. The social media links will be in the description bar below. That's when I get round to posting them. Until then, this is me being Frankie Cross Smales. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, very well. May the force be with you, and have a good morning, noon, and night, wherever you are. And in the mortal words of Stanley, Excelsior.